welcome. You're watching The Buck Stops here and I'm Barkha Dutt. 32 days after the unrest in the Kashmir Valley, the Prime Minister has broken his silence. On this program tonight, we'll be asking whether his words can bring a healing touch to the wounded valley. Also on the program today, former Jammu and Kashmir Chief Minister Omar Abdullah will be talking about the Prime Minister's comments and how he sees them and the ground situation in the Kashmir Valley. But first, to look at what the Prime Minister said as he tried to deliver a message of peace and also said that azaadi already exists for all Kashmiris as it does for all of us as Indians.
देश के प्रधानमंत्री थे तो उन्होंने जो मार्ग अपनाया था इंसानियत, कश्मीरियत और जमहूरियत का, उसी मार्ग पर चलने वाले हम लोग हैं। और मैं मेरे कश्मीर के भाइयों बहनों को आज चंद्रशेखर आजाद के इस महान पवित्र भूमि से कहना चाहता हूं, देश के आजादी के दीवानों ने जो ताकत हिंदुस्तान को दी है, वो कश्मीर को भी वही ताकत मिली। जो आजादी हर हिंदुस्तानी अनुभव करता है, वो आजादी हर कश्मीरी को भी नसीब है।
So as the Prime Minister finally breaks his silence on Kashmir and reaches out appealing for peace, even playing on the word azaadi and saying Kashmiris enjoy azaadi just as all Indians do, it's time to introduce our newsmaker on the program today, somebody who has been in fact imploring the Prime Minister to speak all these days, former Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir and leader of the National Conference in the state, Omar Abdullah. Welcome to the Buck Stops here, Omar. Let me start by asking you, you have tried in all your comments to not really play the role of an opposition leader alone. You have tried to be bipartisan about what's happening in Kashmir. Wearing your bipartisan hat, not wearing your National Conference hat, how do you see the Prime Minister's comments and his decision to finally speak on the 32nd day of the valley in lockdown?
Well, I see it from 2 points of view. One is the fact that he's finally spoken, that it took 32 days and more than 50 deaths is a case of better late than never. So the fact that the Prime Minister has actually acknowledged that there is something wrong in Jammu and Kashmir and that there is a problem that needs acknowledgement and resolution is a good thing. But at the same time, I am very disappointed that once again he's looking at Jammu and Kashmir through the prism of development. That development is the solution to all problems. His PMO Twitter handle put out a tweet saying that both the Mehbooba Mufti government and the central government are focused on resolving all problems through development. Now, the problem in Jammu and Kashmir is not one of development. If development had been the issue, the problem wouldn't have arisen in 1989. This is a problem that is political in nature. The youngsters who have died over the last 32 days, the thousands who have been injured, I'm sorry, but the vast majority of them have not done so because they're looking for jobs, have not done so because they're looking for development, have not done so because they want an addition to the previous 80,000 crore package that the Prime Minister announced. I mean, if development and money were enough to solve this problem, then the Prime Minister's 80,000 crores should have ensured that we didn't see the sort of days that we've seen for the last 32 days. So the fact that the Mehbooba Mufti government and the central government are on the same page at looking at this problem through the prism of development is one that I'm disappointed by. I would have preferred, or I would have liked the Prime Minister to have gone that extra mile and acknowledged that Jammu and Kashmir is different from other states, and as much as what you see here is not a problem or an uprising because of development or the lack of it.
But Omar, to be fair, the Prime Minister did also invoke the Vajpayee legacy, which has almost come to be the standard template now for all conversations around a peace process in the valley. So when he invokes Vajpayee and he talks about Insaniyat, Jamhuriyat, Kashmiriyat, isn't that taking the conversation beyond the absence of jobs or the development context?
No, it isn't, because he used the same words in Srinagar when he came for the public meeting at which he snubbed the then Chief Minister Mufti Muhammad Sayyid Saab, but then only announced an 80,000 crore package, turned around and said, I don't need lessons on Jammu and Kashmir, and that was that. So, I mean, if there was an intention of carrying forward Insaniyat, Jamhuriyat and Kashmiriyat, why didn't we see it during these months leading up to the trouble that started a month ago? The fact is that there is no recognition or acceptance at the central level, and now, as we've seen from the tweets of the PMO handle, at the state government level, of the need to address this problem politically. I think it's become very convenient to use Atal Bihari Vajpayee's phrase of Insaniyat, Jamhuriyat, Kashmiriyat, but then there are no words there are no actions that follow on from these words, and that's where you end up with a problem like this.
Omar, the Prime Minister did a very interesting play on the word azaadi. His decision to actually break his silence was made at a rally that was kicking off the beginning of the government's Azaadi at 70 program, the Independence Day celebrations. And in a sense, he took this word azaadi, which is such a contentious word, whether it's in JNU or certainly on the streets of Srinagar, and he said Kashmiris too, as all Indians, enjoy azaadi already, in a way saying, aap bhi azad hai. How did you see that play on the word azaadi?
Well, I mean, obviously he can't acknowledge the azadi that these people are actually protesting for. The protests that you see on the street aren't about an azadi equal to the azadi enjoyed in the rest of the country. These people want azadi from the country, and therefore, while the Prime Minister is very good with the words that he chooses and how he uses them, whether within the country or outside the country, the fact is that nothing that he has said will actually address the sentiment that we've seen on the street over the last 32 days. This is not about the sort of azadi that the rest of the country enjoys. By that logic, Jammu and Kashmir actually enjoys a degree more because of the autonomous position that we have. This is about azadi from India. I mean, that's the constituency that we need to bring back into the mainstream. That's the constituency that has drifted away from us. And telling that constituency that you have as much freedom as the rest of the country isn't going to cut any ice with them. And neither is the promise of development.
What would you have wanted him to say instead?
Look,
because isn't it a case of
from the very beginning, we have been saying that...
Yeah.
Sorry?
I'm saying, isn't it a case of damned if he does and damned if he doesn't? Because from the very beginning, you have wanted him to speak. Now that he's spoken, you feel that it was platitudinous and in a way, nothing concrete was said. What would you have wanted him to say that would have made you feel a little better?
As we told the Home Minister when he visited, as we have told others that we have interacted with privately, there needs to be an acknowledgement of the political nature of the problem. We can't bury our heads in the sand and hope that it goes away. You can't crush this trouble every few years and hope that it never comes up again. This problem will keep coming up unless we recognize that it is a political problem. It requires political handling. And you saw the acknowledgement of that in previous governments, whether it was Atal Bihari Vajpayee's government reaching out to the Hizbul Mujahideen, whether it was Atal Bihari Vajpayee's government talking to the Hurriyat Conference leaders, even at the level of the then Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. L.K. Advani, whether it was similar initiatives by the UPA government, both in public as well as the private discussions that had started between Mr. Chidambaram and some of the Hurriyat Conference leaders. So there has been an acknowledgement of the political nature of this problem in previous governments. Unfortunately, the current NDA government seems to be unwilling to recognize and acknowledge the political nature of this problem. And that is the only sort of grievance I have with the Prime Minister's statement. The fact that he's acknowledged the problem, great. But he needed to go the extra mile, not look at it through the prism of development. Development is not going to resolve this problem once and for all. Yes, you will get a temporary solution like a band-aid, but it will not be the solution that you require. If you want that situations like this don't arise every few years, then you will have to handle this problem politically. Otherwise, you are going to end up with a problem like this every so often. But
look at one of the comments he makes, which may have particular resonance for you because of what you had to experience and battle in 2010. He said that it pains him immensely when he sees young men who should be holding books and computers holding stones. And, you know, you remember what happened in 2010. You've often spoken about how it was one of the toughest phases of your political career and you learned your lessons from that. But this image of the young Kashmiri boy, and they are boys because, you know, most of them I meet are between 16 and 20, maximum in their early 20s, holding these stones. When the Prime Minister says this, do you not agree? How do you look at this image? It's almost styled on the Intifada, you know, them holding the stones.
We have always said that we'd like to see our youngsters holding pens and cricket bats and sports equipment and computers. But, I mean, I again make the point, these youngsters are not throwing stones because they want the Prime Minister to throw a laptop at them. These youngsters are not throwing stones because they want admission to skill upgradation courses. These youngsters are throwing stones because of a deep-seated resentment at the way in which their political aspirations are being ignored. Now, I understand that what they want, no Prime Minister of India will ever have the mandate to give. But at least the basic acknowledgement that, yes, there is a sentiment that needs to be addressed, there is a constituency that needs to be weaned away from trouble and brought into the mainstream, and that will happen once we first and foremost acknowledge that they are there for political reasons, not for economic and development reasons. Once we start handling the political sort of aspect of it, along with the development and the security aspect, only then will we reach a lasting solution. Our problem is that we are tackling it from two dimensions, from the security dimension and from the economic dimension. We are refusing to acknowledge the political dimension. And until we acknowledge that third aspect, unfortunately, we are doing a disservice to ourselves and the idea of India that we want the people of Jammu and Kashmir to accept.
But Umar, what we are seeing on the streets of South Kashmir this time and even in other parts of the valley is something different, at least from what I've ever seen before. And, 2010, for example, was in response to a fake encounter in Machil and then a tear gas shell killing a young man, Tufail Mattu. This time, these are protests after the elimination of a militant. This is not for justice. This is something else. This is raw, unvarnished rage. How does any government deal with it?
By first acknowledging that there is a reason for that rage. I mean, again, I make the point that, look, if you yourself are acknowledging that this is this rage is not driven by an absence of jobs. This rage is not driven by an absence of development. There is something deeper to it. And that's what we need to acknowledge and then start working towards. If we are going to live in denial and believe that development is going to be the magic potion that will solve the problem or that will address this rage, then it's not going to happen. Yes, there is anger. Yes, there is resentment. Yes, there is rage, and it's directed. I'm not for a moment suggesting that it's directed only towards the ruling establishment. It's directed towards everyone in the mainstream, whether it be the PDP, the National Conference, the Congress, or the BJP. Yes, the ruling alliance is taking a fair share of it, but then that's because they're in power. But it's not as if the opposition parties are being spared this rage or this anger either. So we need to acknowledge that there is a reason for this rage and then try and chip away at it. Look, these 8-year-olds, these 10-year-olds, 15-year-olds, they're angry. But it's not as if their anger has crossed all bounds and that we will not be able to appeal to their better senses. I'm sure we can. Yeah. But it will take time and it will take an acknowledgement of the problem. Unfortunately, and I make this point again, we seem to be unwilling, both at the state government level clearly and at the central government level, to acknowledge the political nature of the problem.
I was going to ask you, and you said it yourself, that this is an anger on the streets that could in fact hit all mainstream parties. I would go even further and say that even the Hurriyat conference, the separatists are not necessarily in control of what's happening on the streets, and therefore that begs the question that even if a government is willing to talk, who do they talk to? This is a leaderless eruption of anger and in some cases violence.
The fact that this agitation is largely leaderless, and I accept your point. Even the Hurriyat conference leaders who would like to believe that they are actually directing this are passengers on this journey. They are issuing calendars, but their calendars are actually in a recognition of public sentiment rather than drivers of that public sentiment. But let's assume for a moment that this rage, this anger, this phase of agitation will not last. At some point in time, hopefully better sense will prevail and cooler and calmer heads will be allowed to prevail. At that point in time, there will be leaders that you can talk to. I refuse to acknowledge or refuse to accept that this situation will continue ad infinitum and that at no point will you have anybody who is willing to come forward and talk to you. There are ways and means of doing it. And again, I don't expect that separatist leaders will suddenly troop into 7 Racecourse Road and sit down for a cup of tea with the Prime Minister. But there are ways that can be employed to begin some sort of dialogue process. They've been done in the past, both within our country, they've been done in other countries as well.
Yeah.
It's only a question of having the will to give them a chance. That
Yeah.
will is unfortunately missing at the moment.
One of the more contentious comments that you made was about Burhan Wani being actually more of a challenge from the grave than had he been alive. Do you continue to stand by that comment given how these last 31 days have unfolded? And is that a way of yours saying that it would have been strategically smarter to not kill him?
Absolutely. And I not only do I stand by it, I believe that the last 32 days have indicated what I said. I can guarantee you, unfortunately, from the lot of youngsters that have been injured over the last 32 days, we have created a huge wealth of youngsters who can be weaned towards militancy. And all they will want is a weapon to be placed in their hands. I actually fear that you will find the ranks of militants, and particularly youngsters from Kashmir, not militants from Afghanistan and Pakistan and elsewhere, who will be willing to join the ranks of militants. And the only thing that will hold them back is the absence of weapons available to them. So not only do I stand by what I said, I actually believe that the last 32 days have vindicated the initial assessment that I made, that Burhan Wani and his death will actually do more to bring about an increase in local militant recruitment than would have been possible when he was alive. And I think that acknowledgement has sort of come in even from the state government. You've had very wishy-washy statements from both the Chief Minister and the Deputy Chief Minister. Of course, they kept contradicting each other. But I think at a certain fundamental level, even they accept that perhaps this could have been handled differently.
I mean, Mehbooba Mufti did eventually indicate that she was not in the loop. But you're right, there have been a number of contradictory statements along the way. So had you been in her place, would you have, had you had the opportunity and been kept in the loop, asked the forces to not kill him?
No, I have no idea why the Chief Minister is not in the loop. I mean, what is she the Chief Minister of then? How dare she not be kept in the loop? Are you telling me that there are operations and there is intelligence that is being generated in Jammu and Kashmir that is not being shared with the Chief Minister? And if that be the case, then what is she doing about it? I would have been unwilling, completely unwilling to accept a scenario where I had been kept out of the loop, where an operation of this nature was being conducted. I, being the head of the unified command, was not informed of the intelligence that was generated and the operation that took place.
But the forces have since said
what we were told initially was that she was kept informed of all developments. No, it was only subsequently that this position was changed. But be that as it may, you're asking me a hypothetical question as to what I would have done. I think my earlier answer to your question is perhaps an indication of how I would have played this out.
No, I was just going to say that the forces have also since argued that they did not even know that Wani was going to be at the encounter site. So, so they would then argue, how could they keep her in the loop? But you are suggesting that given that information, if you had that information, you would still argue that it was a mistake, a strategic mistake to eliminate Wani, and India and the Valley was better served keeping him alive and arresting him.
I'm just saying that the last 32 days have reinforced what I had said initially, that Burhan Wani is more of a rallying point for the disaffected young Kashmiri dead than he would have been alive. And when we meet, I'll be happy to take you through this argument even further, but I won't do that right now.
Let me ask you, in the end, there are hawks on Kashmir who say that liberals, like you, like me, like others who want to see a peace process in the valley, that we are in denial about radicalism, that we are in denial about dimensions of Islamism that are now entering what was supposed to be a politically, a separatist movement is now becoming Islamized. How do you see that argument?
No, these same people live in denial about similar sort of radicalization in the rest of the country. I mean, you have radical elements that have grown in almost every religion, and in that, unfortunately, Islam is not an island that is immune to such forces. You have increased radical elements within the majority community of our country, and you similarly see increased radical elements within the Muslim community, both in the rest of India as well as in Jammu and Kashmir as well. That having been said, I still believe that the more the Kashmiri that holds some sort of affinity and affection for what is traditionally called Kashmiriyat is still alive and is still there on the ground, even though possibly the forces that you are talking about do manage to gain the upper hand in situations like this. Even today, what you see in Jammu and Kashmir is political. There are those who will try and paint it with an Islamic brush, but it isn't. I mean, has the Taliban been able to take root in Jammu and Kashmir? No. Have you seen any sort of effort towards linking what is happening in Jammu and Kashmir with ISIS? No. Even now, when people are sloganeering, they're sloganeering for freedom. Even if the mosques are being used, even mosques in my neighborhood, when the slogans are being shouted, they're slogans for azaadi. They're not slogans for creating an ISIS-like establishment here. So I still think that while there is that element that you're talking about, it hasn't overtaken everything else.
Okay, quickly in the end, since you've been there, you have been in this moment in 2010, a different context, I understand. Any words of advice to Mehbooba Mufti, who's in your place today in 2016?
I think what Mehbooba Mufti needs to do is to convince Government of India that development is not the slogan that is going to cut any ice with these protesters. The acknowledgement of the political nature of the problem and an actual desire to find a political solution is what the need of the hour is.
Omar Abdullah, National Conference leader, former CM of the state. Thank you. A pleasure to have you on the program this evening. So on to our debate on the buck stops here tonight. Will the Prime Minister's outreach help bring a healing touch to a wounded valley? Let's introduce our panel now. From the BJP, we are joined by its leader Tarun Vijay. From the Congress, Manish Tiwari is with us. From the PDP, Nazir Ahmed Lave, Member of Parliament, is also with us. With me in the studio is Ajay Shukla, journalist and defense analyst. Shujat Bukhari, Kashmiri himself, editor of Rising Kashmir, is also with us. And also General Jaswal, who has been former Northern Army commander in the state, is on the program. Let me start with you, Tarun Vijay. What for you was the most important thing in the Prime Minister's comments? One of the most significant things and maybe controversial things from a Kashmiri point of view was the Prime Minister saying that, look, as far as azaadi goes, Kashmiris already enjoy the same azaadi as all Indians. And the fact that he chose to emphasize that at a time when there are slogans for azaadi among the secessionists on the streets of the Kashmir Valley, I thought was an interesting wordplay. How did you see his speech, Tarunji?
Very important. It was like Vajpayee too is speaking straight from the heart to the heart of the Kashmiri people. Let the guns be silenced and let them join the azadi of progress, azadi of development, azadi of a mother waiting for her son to come back home early in the evening and have a hot vajwan. That's the azadi. And let the greenery and the saffron of Kashmir overwhelm entire India. Entire India looks at Kashmir very, very warmly, and let Kashmir be India and India be Kashmir. I think Modi has surpassed even Vajpayee in the warmth and talking straight, candidly to the Kashmiri boys.
But Tarunji, do you think there's an element of denial? Tarunji, do you
it's
think
a Naya Kashmir.
Yes, but Naya Kashmir you say, but is there an element of denial when the Prime Minister says, kuch log gumrah hain? Do you really think this is about kuch log, a handful of people? Because if it was a handful of people, would the valley be in lockdown for 32 days?
Yeah, it's only a handful of people. Very small people, but you know, always the miscreants create an atmosphere where they think that they are ruling the whole region. We salute those Kashmiris who had voted for democracy. We salute those Kashmiris who had been in the opposition. We salute all Kashmiris who had been in the IAS, IPS, in the military services and studying in Bangalore, Chennai, Bombay and Calcutta and Delhi. They are the Kashmiris who hold the future for the valley, future for the country. They are the Kashmiris who must write the new alphabet for a new Kashmir. These are the Kashmiris whom Prime Minister was addressing to, and the small handful of people who are in the influence of Pakistani propaganda, getting funds and getting guns from them, they should now rethink about their role
Okay.
and join the mainstream of progress.
Okay. Now, what was
Mehbooba.
what was interesting was that the Prime Minister did actually not mention Pakistan at all. He did not try and position this as only to do with Pakistan. Manish Tiwari, first comments. This is something that your party has been pushing for, that the Prime Minister must break his silence. He did, and he made an outreach that Prime Ministers before him, even like Dr. Manmohan Singh, have. Will the Congress be bipartisan at this moment and welcome the Prime Minister's outreach?
Well, Barkha, let's try and put this in a context, in a perspective. The context of 18th of April 2003, when Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee reached out to both the Kashmiri separatists or people who were alienated and Pakistan simultaneously, was entirely different. Prime Minister Vajpayee had gone to Srinagar on the back of a successful election. And at that point in time, in the Sher-e-Kashmir Stadium, he made an outreach to both the people in Kashmir who were alienated, and he also simultaneously made an outreach to Pakistan, thereby implicitly or explicitly acknowledging that Pakistan had a certain role to play in the overall resolution of the Jammu and Kashmir dispute in a bilateral context. But here today, the situation is absolutely different. The valley has been locked down for 32 days. There has been curfew, there has been firing. A lot of young people are in the hospital. Insofar as Pakistan is concerned, we've seen the kind of hostile reception which the Home Minister, Mr. Rajnath Singh, received. So therefore, under those circumstances, what exactly does the Prime Minister mean when he says that, you know, he is prepared to walk the talk of Insaniyat, Kashmiriyat and Jamhuriyat? Does it mean an outreach only to the Kashmiri separatists? Does it mean an outreach further than that?
I would imagine it means everybody. I would imagine it means everybody, because that's what the agenda of alliance says.
There was an outreach to people on the other side.
So let me before I get Shujat Bukhari on that, let me just
wait and see exactly what does the Prime Minister mean
word
by
Hindustaniyat also. He was speaking from the birthplace of Chandrasekhar Azad, and he mentioned it.
So, Tarun Vijay, do you want to briefly answer that? Who does the Prime Minister plan to talk to if there are talks going forward? It's not actually clear that what this will be followed up with. But who does he plan to talk to?
I think he should be ready to talk to everyone. Everyone who believes in the Hindustaniyat, Kashmiriyat, Jamhuriyat and Insaniyat. Everyone who believes in the progress. Everyone who wants to create a new future for Kashmir. Everyone who wants to have peace in the valley. Everyone who does not is imprisoned by the few miscreants who are blocking the highway. If one person blocks the highway, it should not mean that the entire highway people are with him.
Okay,
so
now
that is the reason.
Now the point is how are you going to get back the men on the street who are actually secessionists? How are you going to get the men on the street who are actually secessionists? Now, Nazir Ahmed, your alliance agreement with the BJP actually commits yourself to talks with all stakeholders, including the separatists. How do you see the Prime Minister's outreach? Because many people believe that the ideological disconnect between your party and the BJP is so strong that there can be no forward movement.
Yes, बरखा, आप जानते हैं कि जम्मू कश्मीर का जो मामला है ये कोई लैंड ऑर्डर का मसला नहीं है। ये जो मामला है, आप घर घर जाते हैं, जो कश्मीर का जो इशू है ये पॉलिटिकल इशू है। आज जो हमारे प्रधानमंत्री साहब ने ऐलान किया कि हम जम्मू कश्मीर के लोगों को आजादी देना चाहते हैं, चाहे कोई किसी किस्म की आजादी होनी चाहे वो उसको मिले, क्योंकि वी आर लिविंग इन अ सेकुलर कंट्री। लेकिन उसके बाद जो जम्मू कश्मीर का मामला है, रेस्ट ऑफ इंडिया, ये तो पॉलिटिकल इशू है। इस पॉलिटिकल इशू को जब पॉलिटिकली आप मतलब इशू इसको एड्रेस नहीं करेंगे, तब तक हमें लगता है कि शायद जम्मू कश्मीर के हालात ऐसे ही रहेंगे, क्योंकि 2008 में भी यही हुआ, 2010 में भी हुआ।
साहब, आज उमर अब्दुल्ला ने इस प्रोग्राम में एक इंटरव्यू दिया जिसमें उन्होंने कहा कि प्रधानमंत्री अभी भी, उनकी स्पीच से लगा कि अभी भी वो पॉलिटिकल इशू नहीं मानते, वो इसको डेवलपमेंट मुद्दा मानते हैं। और उन्होंने एक वाकया बोला, उन्होंने कहा कि जो लड़के पत्थर फेंक रहे हैं वो लैपटॉप्स नहीं चाहते, जो लड़के पत्थर फेंक रहे हैं वो नौकरी नहीं चाहते। तो आपको लगता है कहीं कि अभी भी ये डिनायल है इस बात का कि ये एक राजनीतिक मुद्दा है, एक पॉलिटिकल मुद्दा है, इकोनॉमिक मुद्दा नहीं है? नज़ीर
ये
साहब।
पॉलिटिकल इशू भी है और डेवलपमेंटल इशू भी है। देखिए, आपने देखा जो उन्होंने 2008 में किया, 2010 में किया, हमें कहने की जरूरत नहीं है। हम ब्लेम गेम नहीं कर रहे हैं किसी के इंसान पर। लेकिन आज जो हमारी सरकार है बीजेपी और पीडीपी की, जो सेंट्रल में भी है, स्टेट में भी है, हम चाहते हैं लोगों के जो एस्पिरेशंस है, हम वो चाहते हैं कि जो इंटरनल कॉन्ट्रैक्टर्स बने हैं, जो हमारे यहाँ से सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट से जो लोग भेजे गए, उन ऑर्डर्स को इंप्लीमेंट नहीं किया गया। जब उन ऑर्डर्स को, जो हमारे कश्मीर के लोगों को, बच्चों को एक्सपीरियंस थे सारे देश के लोगों पर, जब भी आते हैं, 2008 में भी आए डेलीगेशन, उससे पहले भी आ गए, 2010 में भी आ गए, लेकिन उसका रिजल्ट जो कुछ नहीं निकला, चाहे इंटरनल कॉन्ट्रैक्टर्स हो, चाहे पार्लियामेंट्री डेलीगेशन हो। लोगों को लगता है कि शायद हमारे साथ सिंसियर हमारे मुल्क के लोग नहीं है। इसीलिए आज प्राइम मिनिस्टर ने कहा कि हिंदुस्तान के सारे लोग, देश के सारे लोग कश्मीरियों के साथ हैं। आज लोगों को पता चला कि सारा देश हमारे पीछे है और जम्मू कश्मीर में जो सरकार चल रही वो भी चलानी है, लेकिन जम्मू कश्मीर के सरकार का लैंड ऑर्डर प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, ये पॉलिटिकल इशू है। जब पॉलिटिकली हम इसको एड्रेस नहीं करेंगे, उसके बाद
डेवलपमेंट देयर इन द प्राइम मिनिस्टर्स स्पीच। व्हाट डिड यू थिंक, अजय?
I just came back from Kashmir a couple of days
start
back.
हुआ
And first of all, the starting assumption on which everybody seems to be working, which is that this is a handful of people propped up by Pakistan.
No, not everyone's not working on that. Tarun Vijay has made that point, and Nazir Ahmed has not made that point. The National Conference is not making that point. I'm not making that point. You're not making that point.
The Prime Minister's assumption, the basis of the Prime Minister's speech
Though he didn't
seems to
mention
be
Pakistan.
He didn't mention Pakistan, but he seems to believe that this is confined to a handful of people
Kuch
who
log
can be
ubhra
won
hue.
over.
Right.
Kuch log ubhre hue hain. This is absolutely incorrect. Today, if you were to replace the stones in the hands of those people with laptops, they would probably throw the laptops at the security forces. There is widespread anger and disillusionment. And since we are all comparing this with Vajpayee's speech, let me just remind whoever is listening, Vajpayee was successful in calming Kashmir not because of the words that he said, not because of any word play on azaadi or on insaniyat. He was successful because he brought real change on the ground in Kashmir. First of all through the ceasefire, second of all through Karwan-e-Aman, third through initiating a dialogue process with Pakistan, which everybody in Kashmir was following and knowing.
And even with the faction of the Hizbul Mujahideen, which Dullat mediated and brought the Hizbul to the table.
The point I'm making is this is not a time for wordplay. It's a time for real hard actions that reassure people that something is being done to deal with our political issues and to actually take that forward.
Quickly, who would you talk to? Because what the rage you're seeing on the streets right now is leaderless. It's not in control of the Hurriyat Conference. It's not in control of any one separatist leader. So even if the BJP decided to talk like Vajpayee had, who would they talk to?
The Prime Minister needs to travel to Srinagar. He needs to speak directly to the people of Kashmir. There is, you know, Kashmir gets flared up as quickly as it gets unflared.
Yeah.
And I think an outreach, a gesture, not like when he went there when Mufti Saeed was being sworn in, or when that alliance was being forged, when he said, I don't need any advice from anybody on how to deal with Kashmir. He needs to ask the people, what is it that is your problem? What are your issues? And outreach comes from the heart, not from a set of words.
So before I get Tarun Vijay to respond to that, Shujat, would you like to add to that? How do you think these words will go down on the streets of the valley?
Yeah, see, I think what Mr. Vijay is saying, he is in complete denial that what has been happening in Kashmir, as far as the PM breaking his silence on Kashmir after 32 days is concerned, I think he was forced to break his silence. It took him complete 1 month to speak about Kashmir, even as 60 people, nearly 60 people have actually died and more than 5,000 people have been injured. So I think he has not said anything significant as only by referring to actually Vajpayee's policy of Insaniyat Jamhuriyat. I must remind you here that he started this on June 24, 2013 when he invoked Vajpayee's policy on Kashmir. He spoke on November 22nd in 2014. He spoke the same language on November 7, 2015. He said the same thing on December 9, 2014. He said the same thing on April 20th, 2016. So, but I think that nothing has been done as far as the Vajpayee's policy on Kashmir is concerned. I mean, even if that did not bring the desired result, except that there was bonhomie between India and Pakistan and it delivered some confidence building measures. But in 2 years of BJP rule, we have not seen this government inching towards any such kind of a policy which Prime Minister is referring every time there's a crisis in Kashmir, and referring to the problem as a handful of people. Then why are you locking down 7 million people for the last 32 days? I mean, why your elected representatives are not able to go to their constituencies and tell their people that whatever you are doing is wrong?
What would you have wanted him to say instead? Nobody is really saying that. Everybody has been saying all these days the Prime Minister should have spoken. Now that he's spoken, nobody is saying what should he have wanted
I think, Barkha, it is to be seen that what he has spoken, I mean, is there any message which could actually break the deadlock in Kashmir? I mean, the BJP is in coalition with PDP, and the PDP MLA from Tral is saying that Burhan was not a terrorist, he was a kind person. I mean, how does this go? And the MP from PDP is telling you, and BJP person is also there, he is telling you that it's a political problem. But BJP doesn't, recognize that. They are saying that these are some people who are misguided and all that. So entire Kashmir Valley is misguided for that matter.
Tarun, you've heard all the comments that have been made from Ajay. Let's take Ajay's point first.
See, Kashmir runs in our veins. It's not any denial. There is some unrest, and the people who are locking out Kashmir for last 32 days are also our children. Soldiers are also our children. We must speak to every single person who leaves the stone, leaves the gun, and tries to accept the reality and join the mainstream. They are our blood.
But to
they are our
Ajay's
blood
point,
brothers.
But to
so
Ajay's
we would
point,
like to speak to them.
Yes. To Ajay's point that if you gave them
But
laptops,
a
they probably throw
small
those
number
laptops.
of people cannot overwhelm the entire valley. You know, the stone pelters are a smaller, very minuscule minority, and much larger are the majority of Kashmiri boys who are in Rajasthan universities, who are in Bangalore, who are in Delhi. They are not a stone pelters.
So let me get Ajay and Manishan on that. We
should reject these students, and we should speak to those stone pelters. The reality is that most of the Kashmiris want peace, except a few misguided people who are getting support from Pakistan. We cannot play Pakistan's game in our India.
Okay,
let Ajay
and Manishan respond to that. Let Ajay go ahead. Ajay, go ahead.
Mr. Tarun Vijay seems to believe that there's this small group of Kashmiris who are agitating for azaadi, and there's a large group of Kashmiris who are voting in the elections and studying in the colleges outside and looking for a better life. He doesn't seem to realize that all these people who are voting in the elections also want azaadi and are also agitating on the ground. That people who are studying outside are feeling alienated and also want reassurance and to hear words of wisdom from the Prime Minister. He seems to, if this is the understanding in the BJP of what the problem is, then we are not in for a solution at any time in the near future.
Let me see if his ally agrees with him before I get Manish. Nazir साहब, आप क्या बोलेंगे जब तरुण जी कहते हैं कि कुछ लोग हैं, जब प्रधानमंत्री कहते हैं कि हैंडफुल ऑफ लोग हैं, आप क्या कहेंगे? क्योंकि पीडीपी पहले तो सेल्फ रूल डॉक्यूमेंट होता था, महबूबा मुफ्ती जो मिलिटेंट्स मारे जाते थे उनके बच्चों को भी मिलने जाती थी. Yes, Tarun Vijay, what's your question and who is it?
नहीं, मैं आपसे केवल एक सवाल जानना चाहता हूँ. रैना कॉल भट्ट इधर है, रैना कॉल भट्ट उधर है. क्या वजह है? आपको आजादी किससे चाहिए? खून एक है, नस्ल एक है. आप कोई अरब और तुर्किस्तानी और मंगोल नहीं है. आप भी हमारे जैसे हिंदुस्तानी है. एक रैना कॉल भट्ट को यहाँ सब कुछ मिल रहा है, दूसरा रैना कॉल भट्ट मुसलमान होकर आजादी मांग रहा है. ये खत्म होना चाहिए. हम सब एक हैं, एक खून है, एक नस्ल है, एक पुरखे, एक इतिहास, एक तवारीख, एक जुग्राफिया. किससे आजादी चाहेंगे?
देखिए बरखा, हमारा जो बीजेपी और पीडीपी के साथ जो अलायंस है, जो आज प्राइम मिनिस्टर ऑफ इंडिया ने जो बयान दिया है, उसको हम बड़े अप्रिशिएट करते हैं कि हमारे एजेंडा ऑफ अलायंस में लिखा है द एनडीए गवर्नमेंट लेड बाय श्री अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी हैड इनिशिएटेड अ डायलॉग प्रोसेस with all political groups including the Hurriyat conference in the spirit of इंसानियत, कश्मीरियत एंड जमहूरियत. अगर वो एजेंडा इंप्लीमेंट हो जाएगा जम्मू कश्मीर में, देखिए 2002 से 2005 तक कितना स्टेबिलिटी थी वहां जम्मू कश्मीर में. अगर इंस्टेबिलिटी हो गई 2008 में, 2012 में, जो उसके लिए जिम्मेवार लोग हैं, आज उसका हमें खमियाजा पड़ता है कि 1 साल से हमारी सरकार चल रही है, मुफ्ती साहब भी चले गए, अब महबूबा जी को 2 महीने हो गए एमपी में ये चीफ मिनिस्टर बनते हुए अब मौका ही नहीं मिलता है हमको कि हम डेवलपमेंट कर देंगे, लेकिन लिहाजा कश्मीर का जो मामला है ये तो लैंड ऑर्डर का मामला नहीं है, ये कोई
आप वही बात बोले जा रहे हैं। मैं कह रही हूँ आप बीजेपी के साथ सहमत हैं कि नहीं हैं? बीजेपी की तरुण विजय जो बोल रहे हैं, जो
सहमत है, क्यों नहीं
सहमत हैं? आपको लगता है कि नौकरी देने से या इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट आने से ये मामला हल हो जाएगा? क्योंकि पहले पीडीपी सेल्फ रूल की बात करती थी।
देखिए बीजेपी और पीजेपी का जो एक एजेंडा ऑफ अलायंस है, उसको जब इंप्लीमेंट करें वो बीजेपी के कोर ग्रुप और पीडीपी के कोर ग्रुप ने बनाया है।
लिखा है कि सस्टेन डायलॉग विद पाकिस्तान एंड सस्टेन डायलॉग विद सेपरेटिस्ट्स एज वेल। शुजात, लेट मी जस्ट गेट यू इन नाउ। इट्स रेनिंग इन जयपुर एंड चेन्नई, सो वी आर हैविंग टेरिबल प्रॉब्लम्स जम्मू कश्मीर का। टॉकिंग टू जनरल जसवाल एंड शुजात, go ahead if you can hear me.
No, I don't think. I mean, there is no, as far as coordination is concerned, there is no synchronization, there is no coordination. They have entered into an agenda of alliance where it is categorically stated that they will have a sustained dialogue with Pakistan and they will also have a dialogue with Hurriyat. But look at what BJP spokesman is saying to you. I mean, there is no synchronization. They have just actually, I think, signed a paper, and it is just a paper. I mean, nothing has been so far implemented in last 1.5 years as far as agenda of alliance is concerned. I mean, it has not been honored. It has not been respected. It was just a piece of paper to actually join the government. And today also, I mean, the PDP spokesman in your program is saying that this is a political problem, but the BJP person is saying that it's not a political problem. There are only a handful of people. So, I mean, how does it go from here? I think it's to mislead the people. At least they should clarify that what the stand of these parties is on the agenda of alliance. I mean, Prime Minister has spoken. It's very good. He has talked about that boys should not hold the guns, they should hold the books, but who has to move forward? There has to be a mechanism for that. I mean, you have to come out with a mechanism. As I said, that it is at least the sixth time the Prime Minister has spoken invoking Vajpayee on Kashmir. I give you the dates, but have they moved an inch on that? Tell me in last 2 years.
Let me just get Manish and General Jaswal in, and then we can get others to react. Manish, go ahead.
Well, Barkha, eventually you started by asking a question that what is it that the Prime Minister should have said if he shouldn't have said what he did. The question is not what the Prime Minister is saying. The question is what the Prime Minister is going to do. Eventually, is the Prime Minister going to initiate a dialogue with the Hurriyat? Is he going to be talking to Saeed Shah Gilani, to Mirwaz Farooq? And as you were pointing out, are these people really in control of the ground situation? Then there are elements across the border in Pakistan who were engaged by Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee earlier, and as you and Ajay Shukla were pointing out. So is Mr. Modi going to talk to the Hizbul Mujahideen? Are they going to talk to Syed Salahuddin? So therefore, eventually, by just invoking the words Insaniyat, Jamhuriyat and Kashmiriyat, you really get nowhere. The reality is that over the last 30 days, has the BJP, PDP government in Jammu and Kashmir or the central government, have they initiated any kind of an outreach on the ground to the people who are alienated? And the answer is no. So therefore, one fine day you stand up and you use 3 magic words and think that the problem is going to go away, hey presto. Well, it's not happening.
So General
the situation
Jaswal
on the ground is not going to change tomorrow.
Yeah.
Now, General Jaswal, we're actually having this discussion on Kashmir.
I'm surprised what Manish is saying.
Tarunji, just 1 minute. General Jaswal, we're having this...
Well, you may be surprised what I'm saying, but I'm equally surprised at your state of denial.
Okay, Tarun Vijay can respond in a moment. General Jaswal, we're having this conversation on a day when Irom Sharmila, and if we can just bring up that iconic image, has actually broken her fast after 16 years. She has, of course, as you know, been protesting against AFSPA. That's a big lightning rod for argument in the Kashmir Valley as well. My question to you would be that after we keep invoking Vajpayee, what is that concrete thing that we are willing to do? When I say we, I mean the Indian state. What are we willing to do in Kashmir? We seem to be willing to travel the extra mile, for example, in Nagaland. The Prime Minister is personally invested in a Naga peace accord. So why are we applying such different rules to Kashmir?
First of all, what we have to stop is the internal political squabbles which are there.
Yes.
And then, of course, look at Kashmir as a concerted problem of the nation. I think what the Prime Minister has said, he has said and he has meant what he has said. Now, the results won't come straight away forthwith. He has analyzed the problem, and the word azaadi, what he's spoken is being, in my viewpoint, is being misconstrued. He's saying Kashmir requires azaadi. Doesn't mean that they should be given azaadi otherwise.
No, we're not.
They
No one is
are-
misconstruing
he's
it.
trying
We're
to
saying he
hint.
took that word and gave it a kind of meaning of the state. He tried to mainstream the word azadi. Nobody's
Azadi of the whole
misconstruing it.
country, of the democracy.
Yes, nobody
The democracy
misunderstood
which
it.
is
I
there
assure
must
you,
also
nobody
prevail.
misunderstood it. Nobody thought the Prime Minister was giving away Kashmir.
That's my fault.
Not at all.
That's my fault.
Yes.
But what today the problem over there is not the job content as to people are looking for jobs, etc., infrastructure development.
Yes.
There is a resentment. Now this resentment, what exactly is the resentment, we want to know. Now, you see the youth today from 16 to 18 or 20, they're saying we do not want pro-Pakistan. We want Azadi. Now, they should also know that when the Prime Minister says something, that he's going to reach out, he's showing his concern. It is a comprehensive approach from his side.
And
it
I'm
is not
saying,
a submission.
Okay, that's an interesting word you
It is not a
use.
submission.
Sir. Comprehensive approach. Now, what is that comprehensive approach when the PDP and the BJP, at least on this program, cannot agree on who we should talk to? Ajay.
There is no comprehensive approach. It's quite clear. I mean, if one is going by what Tarun Vijay is saying and assuming that that represents mainstream BJP thinking, then the approach seems to be that this is just a bunch of misguided youths, toss them a few sops,
No, the Prime
make a
Minister,
few
no Prime Minister
statements.
would come and openly say that, you
Ajay,
know, this is secession.
I don't think...
No Prime Minister is going to openly say, but when you're talking to the Kashmiri people, when you're trying to calm public anger, and this is all about calming public anger that has led to the valley being locked down for the last 32 days, that's the immediate problem right now. How do you unlock this conundrum?
So put something concrete on the table.
You have to make a statement that appeals.
Would you have
firstly,
wanted him to hear talk about civilian deaths, the pellet injuries, for example? You know, I pulled out Manmohan Singh's speech from 2010, not too different, both cautious, but there was one line in there
no
about
Prime
those deaths.
Minister is or should apologize for what's been happening, at least in terms of controlling a law and order situation. What he has to do is forward-looking and give a route ahead. Let the Kashmiri people know that this is the route that we are going to follow
but he
to
can't
address
spell
your
that route in a
concerns.
public address.
I beg your pardon?
How could he spell out that roadmap in a public address? It's
We
probably
will
still a work in
talk
progress.
to all parties concerned.
Okay.
We will talk to
We
all
will
the
talk to
stuff
everybody.
that's in
Okay,
the agenda
Shujat.
of alliance.
Okay, 30 seconds to everybody. Shujat.
Can I just come in
I'm
on
coming to you,
that?
sir. Shujat, last words. Shujat.
Yeah, I think I agree with Ajay. I mean, it's very important that the Prime Minister should have owned the responsibility of the situation that has happened in Kashmir, whatever has happened in Kashmir in last 1 month. I mean, they fail to recognize that people are locked down for 32 days in Kashmir. I mean, there is no remorse as far as the deaths are concerned. I mean, at least show some remorse that people have lost their lives. I mean, if you're talking about, repeatedly talking about the integral part, then you should feel that integral part is groaning in pain, and you should at least show some kind of remorse that people have lost their lives. And
General Jaswal.
Yeah, first of all, when I say comprehensive approach, it is, after all, the Prime Minister, when he speaks to the nation and he addresses the Kashmiris, a lot of input has been given to him. He consolidates that and puts it across. You don't expect him to publicly apologize over there. Now, secondly, now whatever packages are going to come up, the people, the mainstream people who are not having any say, firstly, we have to check their credentials, whether they are going to be really participating in the correct sense.
Yeah.
There is no point, talking. Secondly, no one is talking about those poor CRPF chaps who've been ambushed. What about those chaps? What are the feeling about the people who are deployed over there? I feel extremely sorry for the boys who've died over there, the civilians who've been injured,
So we do
etc.
talk about them.
After
We
all,
do
I've got
talk.
very
All
good
of our
friends.
reports have actually, at least mine, have interviewed injured soldiers, have told the stories from their perspective as well. But the point is that if you do not solve this, more and more CRPF soldiers will be put in the line of fire, taking the hit for the failure of politics. Now, Manish, quickly, I have to go around. Manish, Nazir Saab and Tarun Vijay. Manish.
Well, Barka, this government needs to think the entire situation in Jammu and Kashmir through properly. Now, what is the trigger for the current unrest? The trigger for the current unrest is the death of Burhan Wani in an encounter. Now, this government is not even very clear about the credentials of Burhan Wani. The central government says that he's a terrorist. The Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir says that, he was killed by accident. The security forces did not know that he was there. The Deputy Chief Minister, who belongs to the
accident. She said that if we had known it was him, there could have been another chance.
My bottom line is, when there is no clarity, even on that incident which has triggered off the current unrest, I don't think that this government has any clarity with regard to how to calm passions in Jammu and Kashmir.
Let Nazir Saab take that, and I do have to conclude very quickly. So Nazir Saab, बोलिए, जब बुरहान वानी के encounter पर भी कोई consistency
हम चाहते हैं कि
बोलिए
जी देखिए, जो जम्मू कश्मीर के लोग जो चाहते हैं, वो चाहते हैं कि जैसे वाजपेयी के दौर में इंसानियत, जमहूरियत, कश्मीरियत, उस पर वो इम्प्लीमेंटेशन होना चाहिए ऑन ग्राउंड. सारा देश इकट्ठा होना चाहिए ताकि लोग, जम्मू कश्मीर के लोगों को लगेगा कि हमारे पीछे सारा देश है, उससे सारा मसला हल हो जाए. थैंक यू.
तरुण जी.
The strongest ever Prime Minister that Narendra Modi is today can think out of box and give the last longing solution to Kashmir problem. And he will do it. He will speak to everyone possible and give every conceivable solution for peace in Kashmir. Believe us, within the ambit of tricolor, no Prime Minister, whichever party he or she might belong to, can ever compromise with tricolor.
Of course.
Kashmiris will get everything.
Okay.
All azaadi. But within the ambit of tricolor, this is the golden chance for everyone.
Last word.
He has a path, a successful path laid out before him by Vajpayee. He needs to open dialogue with the separatists. He needs to open dialogue with Pakistan. He needs to also calm a communal temper across India, because the Kashmiris are all looking at all this, this beef issue and the lynching of Muhammad Akhlaq and so on, in a manner which they never used to look before. He needs to calm communal tensions across India. All of these things put together will provide an assurance that something is happening.
I have to leave it there. I think what's moot is what follows the Prime Minister's outreach. Words alone are symbolic, yes, but the action that follows will be even more important. Thanking our panel tonight. Thank you for watching the Bug Stories.